Hello, 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 and welcome to a brand new episode of Three Drams. Welcome, as always, I am your host, Matt Healy from potstill.com, also known as Potstill Matt, and I am delighted to welcome you here for May's edition, which is episode 19 of the Three Drams live stream. As always, if you're new to the show, if you're an old hand of the show and have visited lots of times before, you will know that we're going to be making a fantastic tasting this evening with three flavor makers and creators who are going to bring you through some whiskeys that are going to be fantastic, new, tantalizing, and delicious. For some of you, you may have tasted these before. Some of you are going to be completely new. This is, as always, your opportunity to be able to jump in and ask these people what your thoughts and questions are about the brand, the expression, the distilleries themselves. This is your time to shine about whether or not you want to find out more about these Irish whiskies. And of course, as always, if you're one of the people with one of these tasting sets sitting at home, you taste along with us. Tell us what you're tasting and what your thoughts are throughout the session as we go along. And at the end, we will be asking you what your favorite whiskeys are of the evening in order, because everyone's tasting decisions are different when it comes to preferences, because preference of whiskey is subjective, which we are fantastic to showcase on the show. Because if anyone of you have watched the show before, it is always a huge flurry of different numbers at the very end of the show. But of course, I have to say a very big thank you to the guys at Irish Malts and Three Drams, the Donovan brothers and their team there, who will put this on every month, get all of the tasting packs to you across the world. As you said, always, we're just over 1,800 packs a month across the globe. We're in Brazil, we're in Canada, we're in Japan, we're in Australia, all across the continent of Europe. And of course, there's always such a large focus of people coming in from Ireland as well. Many people watch back after the show. So to you guys, particularly if you are in a time zone that is asleep right now, a very big welcome to you. But I am delighted to welcome you to the show. As always, we jump in with whatever whiskeys we are happy to be tasting this month. And this month, we have a fantastic tasting pack. We are joined with people from Blacksmith Kinsale, of course, Dingle Distillery, and then, of course, the folks from Sliabh League. So we have a fantastic lineup, some fantastic flavor creators and makers. But tonight, in true fashion, there has been some technical little hiccups. So we will be jumping to jam number 2 to start off the evening. And we're going to be jumping straight into the Dingle Single Pot Still 5th release and meeting a very big friend of the show, a person who has been here a couple of times before, but always a fantastic, fantastic guest to have. So guys, please do join me in welcoming Mr. Graeme Coull, Master Distiller of Dingle Distillery. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you doing? Great to have you back.
Evening. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I was just thinking there, I think this is my 4th appearance, so 4 out of 19. I've got a good strike record there.
I was going to say, you guys just keep releasing fun and interesting things that require you to join us on the show. It is fantastic to have you back. Obviously, a master distiller of Dingle Distillery from Dingle, County Kerry. We have the 5th single pot still release. As a Scottish man heading up one of the most exciting Irish distilleries in the country, why don't you give us a 30-second crash course on what makes single pot still so interesting and fantastic, not only to work with, but also to consume. And then maybe while you're doing that, I'm going to just pour a little bit of Dram number 2, as we are starting with Dram number 2 this evening.
Okay, Matt, thank you. Yes, yeah, pot still, single pot still, very, very, very different. For me, I spent 28 years now, I think, making whiskey. But 25 years of those, I certainly wasn't making pot still whiskey, and probably 23 years of those, I didn't even know what pot still whiskey was, or my interpretation of pot still would have been quite different. Yeah, so pot still, it's single malt with a difference, single malt with that extra added ingredient of unmalted cereals, unmalted grains, which the biggest contributor is unmalted barley. So at Dingle, our mash bill is around about 60-40 malted barley, unmalted barley, and that's all combined together in the mash tun, and then processed, fermented, distilled, matured as we would with single malt. But hopefully tonight people will taste the end product and find slight differences or even major differences between that and single malt, if that's what they're more used to.
Absolutely. I see Alan Crow jumping in the comments saying he's a huge fan of Dingle whiskey and he's tried this ahead of the session and he's a big fan. And as you say, very different to single malt. So hopefully some people at home will have tried this before, but some people maybe it's their first time trying pot still. So I appreciate you giving us that little crash course into what pot still is. Now, we've had you on the show before, as you mentioned, and we've tried a lot of different and very interesting whiskeys from Dingle Distillery. So why don't you tell us what's in the glass this evening? I've got my very appropriately branded glasses here. And I'm delighted to jump back into this fantastic whiskey. Dingle single pot still, batch number 5.
Yeah, so this is a pot still, as you say, it's our 5th release, so it doesn't take a genius to work out that there've been 4 releases prior to that. If anybody doesn't quite know Dingle Distillery, we're a distillery heading towards 10 years old in December, so we were the first of the newbies. We're leading that pack. So we're relatively mature, and we're getting relatively mature in whiskey terms. Pot still 5th release. It marks an occasion, really. It marks the end of the batch releases at Dingle. On the single malt side, we had batches 1 to 6, and on the pot still side, we've had pot still 1, release 1 to pot still 5. So it's a nice way to finish, because the distillery itself will hopefully go through a transformation over the next 12 to 18 months when we basically rebuild the distillery and make it future-proof it for the next, hopefully, 20, 30 years. So this is a nice way to bring the batch releases to an end. It's pot still, probably in its in its purest form, if you could say that, matured in a first full bourbon cask. So there is wood influence there, but as you can see by the color, it's not it's certainly not a dark color. You would never expect that from a bourbon cask, and color will tell you an awful lot about the whiskey. So from the color, it's subtle, it's light straw gold, and from that you can hopefully take that the wood impact is a little more subtle than, say, a sherry influenced cask. So what I hope it does, it allows you then to kind of get below the wood influence and really delve into the character of pot still spirit itself. So
as we throw our nose into this being fully matured in bourbon, what things do you think people might be expecting on the nose here?
So this whiskey is 7 years old. So I think that's probably the best way to start, and that puts it in context. That tells you how close to new make spirit it is, or how far away it is. So 7 years, the pendulum swings away from new make spirit character towards wood character as it matures through whatever 10, 15 years. So to me, the pendulum is still swinging back towards the new make spirit character. So that's where you're still picking out quite fresh notes, quite citrus notes. With pot still, there's always a grassy element, a herbal element as well coming through. So on the nose, it's got, to me, it's nice. It's fresh. It's light. It's fruity and sweet. Just a very enticing nose, I would say.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to say sláinte. I'm going to cheers the camera, and I'm going to have my first little delve in. So say sláinte.
Sláinte. I did. I've been in a couple of times just to make sure.
I believe that's called quality control.
It is, keeping your hand in, as they say.
Exactly. So lovely, fresh, little sweetness spry. I'm actually, for some reason in my head, particularly on the nose, I get kind of a very nice, like kind of a lemon curd or lemon biscuit kind of characteristic to it. In my head, I know exactly what biscuit I'm eating, but I cannot remember the name of it for the.
You're right there. There's a combination of the citrus element, the lemon, which to me is the spirit character, and then as you mentioned, biscuity notes, or they can be more related to the wood, but also from the malt aspect as well, because remember there is malted barley in here as well. This is not, single malt and pot still whiskies do have many similarities in the way that they're constructed and made and produced. So you will get similarities, but I think for me it's the kind of herbal overriding notes that pot still, and the spice as well, that pot still would be more known for.
Absolutely. And for you, I suppose, when you're in the warehouses and the Hughes family tell you we want a fifth release, is it a delight or a magical, I suppose, mystery tour trying to find the casks for the final pot still batch release?
Yeah, I think for me, going into the warehouse, it's a bit like going into your kitchen cupboard, and that. But think of what's in your kitchen cupboard has to last you several years, so you can't just go and grab the chocolate or the sweeties out of there. You need to take a step back from the cupboard and assess what basically what meals are you going to make for the next few years. So with that, you're always trying to make the best meal you can given the timing and the ingredients that are there. So for me, this was perfect timing to release a Dingle whiskey in a bourbon cask and bourbon cask only. Prior to this, we'd been combining casks together, generally bourbon and sherry, because it's a very common thing to do, and it works very, very well. But
a fan favorite.
Yeah, but to put bourbon out there on your own, you really you're putting yourself out there. It's certainly, there's nowhere, not many places to hide with that. So to me, that the spirit has to hold up, and also the wood, the bourbon cask has to have done a decent bit of work in the 7 years as well to justify its place. But hopefully, I just it's got a lovely balance for me in it. I'm a little biased. I do love whiskey matured in bourbon casks.
And obviously, the backbone of really any distillery in Europe at the moment, and usually further afield as well, bourbons make a fantastic maturation cask, but also a very large part of any distillery's kind of maturation plan. I presume that they're still a delight to work with, nice and uniform, but giving good flavor, good impact and spirit. As you said, you're seeing this evolution of the spirit away from new make into kind of more cask aged, cask finished spirit. In your mind, does this show when you are looking at this spirit a future direction of maybe even second maturation casks or finishing casks to build on, or do you think I suppose that far ahead when tasting a spirit like this?
Yeah, no, you're always thinking ahead, and before this, as this whiskey was bottled, we obviously emptied casks to create this whiskey. So those casks are still very, very good. For me, a bourbon cask, a second fill bourbon cask, reusing it again can yield a very, very good whiskey, and probably is probably a better second fill than even, let's say, a port second fill or even a sherry second fill. You in a port and a sherry, you do lose an awful lot in the first use, whereas the bourbon cask does tend to keep on giving. I look forward to, we put new make spirit into the cask now for a second fill, and I will leave that longer. I wouldn't see that ever being released at 6-7 years old. That in my head is the Dingle 12-15-year-old of the future. So it's always a balance, of what you're filling, what you're emptying, and what you're bringing in as new casks.
Absolutely. Tina in Germany is asking whether or not, as this is the final of the batch releases, are we going to see a core range single pot still like we did with the single malt, or is something different coming down the lines?
Yeah, no, I definitely think we will. We're maybe, in terms of stock profile, we're a little bit further behind with our pot still. It didn't really kick in the first year or so at Dingle. So we've been a year behind really with pot still in terms of releases, and we're probably maybe a couple of years behind in terms of volume to justify a core release, because that once we go core or signature release, then we want to do that in reasonable volumes and hit most of the markets that we're in. So to do that, you need to be able to sustain it. So maybe a year or two off for a core, but it's definitely not the last of our pot still releases. We will, or our limited releases. We will. You will see limited releases, but they'll just be in a different guise. They'll be a little bit more shaken up, a little bit and mixed, and not quite so formal batch releases and regimented that way.
Absolutely. When you said the pot still didn't kick in the distillery, it's just in terms of production that the first year or so was focused on primarily on malt before moving on to pot still. Is that it?
Yeah, and I think back to 2013, Dingle was the first of the new distilleries. It was it really was uncharted territory for anybody. So the focus then was single malt. Pot still came in quite quickly after, which was nice. But but it's now we're reaping the rewards of that. But obviously stock production wasn't as big in the first 2, 3, 4 years as it is now, and we're by no means big production even now. But so planning for the future, we have to be careful. We'd love to release lots of whiskies, but we need to eke that out a little.
Exactly. Well, I do want to ask you about the impending releases. I have a number of questions about the new limited series and impending releases here as well. But one question is just coming from Gordon, and it's a question that has piqued my interest. And he says, "What is the latest on the countdown of your famed peated Dingle single malt?" You were very kind to send me a sample once it was distilled a few moons ago. And at that point, it tasted like an aged single malt. So I'd be thoroughly thrilled to hear how that's progressing, and I appreciate Gordon asking that question.
Yeah, I think probably maybe regret it now, but I put some of the new make in. We first peated. We made it 2 years ago now. I put some of it in our very small 25-litre virgin oak casks, and basically cooked it for 6 months, or 3 months actually it was. And it came out, with a colour of something that was probably 15 to 20 years old, and obviously shared that with quite a few people, and that that has generated a huge interest, which I'm now regretting because I get questioned on it all the time. But the real stuff, the normal stuff, is sitting in cask, and it's coming in. Well, it'll be 2 years old now, so I think we'd chance it a release at maybe 4 years old, because you can drink peated a little younger, and everybody's a little bit more forgiving with peated whiskies because it has that backbone of strength, of flavour that rides through and covers up any little niggles the whiskey might have from the fact that it's a little bit young.
Well, I think I've mentioned before on one of your previous appearances on the show that I remember speaking to Elliot before you joined the company, and his rule was they would try anything except peated. And I think you were in there 3 months and you had peated out the door. So obviously a great influence and impact you're having so far, especially when I'm sure the greatest master distillers of the world are the ones that can drive a distillery to efficiency and consistency. But I suppose the romantic fun, and I'm sure the intrigue, comes from doing all the stuff that's not the core. So I know people are very interested. But speaking about the limited editions, I suppose the future of Dingle, is there anything you can share with us that what it might look like now that the kind of numbered formal batch releases are coming to an end?
Yeah, I think the new limited releases are probably let's say maybe a 2-3 year program there where we'll explore other cask styles that we haven't used, and maybe not secret, I'm sure there'll be some finishes in there as well, so not just full maturation. So it's a chance probably to explore different avenues, different routes before we can then really concentrate on age statements for Dingle. Then we'll be probably well beyond the 10-year mark, and we'll have the stock to justify a 10-year-old Dingle and maybe 12-year-old Dingle. So it's just another chapter in the book, really, for Dingle, and a chance to see Dingle or taste Dingle in a different light. Yeah.
Absolutely. And from your point of view, if you're using these casks that perhaps haven't been used before with the spirit, for you and the distilling team, I presume it's an interesting fact finding mission as well to see how your spirit interacts with these casks. I'm sure it'll be different to how your previous distilleries would have interacted with these casks.
Yeah, I think it is, and nobody knows. Nobody can. You can only guess how well your whiskey will do or how spirit will do in the cask. But I think as a rule of thumb, if your spirit works well in bourbon and it can work well in a heavy sherry cask, then generally everything in between should be fine. So it's the lightest of spirits will obviously struggle with the heavier of the casks, but I think Dingle has that. The base core spirit has enough character to carry itself through in any cask, really.
Absolutely. So this release is the Dingle fifth single pot still release at 46.5% ABV, if I'm not mistaken. The finale of the formal numbered batch releases of single pot still matured in bourbon, giving it that fresh citrus, lovely different flavor to the spirit than what we've seen before. So a great showcasing, as you mentioned, of the spirit itself and how it's progressing in a cask. As you mentioned, there's nothing to hide. If there were flaws and impurities and imperfections, that's the cask that you'll certainly be noticed in. And I think from the comments section and from my own imbibing this evening, a lot of very happy consumers and imbibers here at the moment. I'm sure that the Dingle team must be very pleased and a fan favorite right now. Is that fair to say?
Oh, definitely. It's always great to get feedback. Distilleries as they grow older, they do go through patches. Where they're you have to be honest. Your spirit is not your spirit is not at its best every year throughout the maturation. So you do have to ride sometimes a little bit of a storm, especially when you're younger. But now we're at an age where we're able to kind of compete with other good whiskies that are out there, and people can appreciate Dingle for what it is.
Oh, well, fantastic. If people were trying to find you online, do you have any ideas of where you might send them?
You find me on Twitter most of the time. Oh, you're talking about the whiskey?
I talk about the whiskey, but I mean yourself as well, a famed man for the Twitter.
Oh, yeah. I always want a few more followers. I need to get more followers than Doug Ledden. That's my aim in life.
You've heard it here, guys. Go on to Twitter, follow Graeme. Graeme, what's your handle on Twitter?
I think I'm not actually sure. It's Graeme _Coull. Dingle Graeme, I think it is actually something like that.
There you go. You keep telling me places to find Dingle online, and I'm gonna find. There you are, Graeme _Coull.
There we go.
I looked it up for you there. So
I hope you follow me, Matt.
Of course I do. You're a keen man for the Twitter the Twitter polls.
Exactly.
I'm usually a keen man to answer them, although sometimes you ask difficult questions like what's the best type of pudding, and if it's white, black, or red, and I didn't even know there was a red. Yeah. So I'm always a fan of the Twitter polls. Of course I follow you. But if people are going to try to find you on Twitter, Graeme _Coull, if they're going to find Dingle online or on Twitter, where should they be looking?
Yeah, so Dingle, obviously, I must say it's available through Irish Malt. And if you go through a link on the Dingle website, it will take you to the Irish Malt's site. They run our sales for us. So Irish Malts and all good off-license and whiskey sellers out there. There were 8,000 bottles, so it's not a massive release, but so you should be able to get your hands on it at least for the next few months, let's say.
Absolutely. I presume in certain markets it'll kind of come online slowly but surely if you can't find it right.
Oh yeah, yeah. Looking further afield, it's definitely certainly gone out to Germany and France. It's definitely in Europe. So hopefully we'll track it down. But again, if any issues, just message the distillery and we'll try and help you and point you in the right direction.
Exactly. And I always say to people, if you're looking for these releases in your local vicinity, go and ask in your local off licenses, because people aren't going to bring in things that people aren't asking for. So you go hound your local off licenses for some Dingle whiskey, much in the way that our friends watching in Germany hound me every month to find out if things are available in Germany. And I pre-warned the Graemes you're going to speak to tonight to tell us whether or not I was in Germany. So Graeme, Coull, you've held up your side of the bargain, letting us know first and foremost whether or not it was available in Germany. So just like I get hounded by our German viewers, and I absolutely love it, make sure you hound your local off licenses, because again, when a salesperson walks through those doors with a bottle of Dingle in their hand, the person behind the counter will go, you know what, that one guy's in here all the time asking for Dingle. It's got to be on the shelf. And that's how we start slowly but surely chipping away and getting more and more Irish whiskies on the shelves. Graeme, Coull, I am absolutely delighted to have had you on the show. We've had a fantastic whiskey. The people in the comment section seem to be having a phenomenal time. Olivia King just dropping in this second saying it's too drinkable, but in a good way. So I think a resounding big thumbs up from the Three Drams community. So thank you so much for joining us on another show, because again, Dingle is just doing so many exciting things these days.
No, thank you, and thank you for everyone tuning in and their support. It's much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much. So I am delighted to be joined by our second guest this evening, and remember, folks, that we are jumping on to Dram number 3. This is a phenomenal segue, because for the first time I get to go from a Graeme to a Graeme, so hopefully I won't forget any names here. Spelled differently, but sure, look, we won't hold it against anyone. I don't know who's right or wrong, but maybe this Graeme can tell us. Mr. Graeme Bell, head distiller, Sliabh League Distillers, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Delighted. Great to see you.
Oh, fantastic. I'm so delighted to have you on the show. Again, a reminder to everyone that we are jumping to Dram number 3 before we jump back to Dram number 1. So I am going to just showcase this for anyone that's not paying attention. Dram number 3. There we are, 3 Drams. Mr. Graeme Bell, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and who the distillery is while I pour this fantastic whiskey into my glass, because I am very excited to be sampling this evening.
Thanks. Well, Matt, thanks for the welcome. I'm delighted to be on the show. I've joined Sliabh League Distillers back in October at the Ardra Distillery, and previous to that, I worked up in Speyside for a spell, out in Kentucky making bourbon, in Canada making some gin and whiskey. And the project to come over here with the Ardra Distillery was kind of such a fantastic opportunity to come to this part of the world.
Well, fantastic. One of those you can't say no. Was that the idea? An offer you couldn't refuse?
It was, yep. I didn't know much about the area when I signed up for the project, but it's an amazing place.
Well, do you know a lot more about it now, do you? I'm hoping.
I do. Well, to be honest, for the first 3 months, I was kind of in the distillery from the morning to evening. So I'm getting out and explore a bit more now. But
oh, fantastic! Well, I'm hoping you're enjoying yourself. You're in an absolutely stunning part of the country up there. Yeah. People who have watched this show before will know I am a very big fan of Sliabh League Distillers, especially the Silkie whiskies, particularly the branded T-shirts. I talk about this all the time. Most comfortable branded T-shirts on the planet. The last time we had Sliabh League on, we sold out the entire distillery store of T-shirts. You need to check it out. They are fantastic. I have thousands of branded T-shirts. They're still the best fitting, the nicest, the comfiest. You need to check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. But anyway, we're not here to talk about T-shirts. We're here to talk about some fantastic whiskey. So this is most likely most people's first time with this whiskey, the legendary Midnight Silkie Irish whiskey. Why don't you give us a little bit of background into what whiskey we're trying at this moment?
Right, yeah. So the Midnight Silkie whiskey was launched just before Christmas, and it's really an extension of our journey taking people through peated, smoky Irish whiskey. So, if you think the Silkie starts with the legendary Silkie, around about 5% peat. Then we move up to the dark Silkie, 15% peated whiskey. And now we've got the Midnight whiskey, around about 35% smoke. So it's a blend of 5 triple distilled single malt whiskies. There was 30% from virgin sherry casks, 35% peated bourbon, 20% Imperial Stout, 10% red wine, and 5% Oloroso sherry casks. So it's a lot more complex, richer, as I said, more peated. And in terms of kind of the nose, I typically get toffee, a bit of sweetness on the nose, a bit of soft smoke towards the end on that.
So, I mean, with that cask regiment, I would say you certainly don't do things by halves. Anyway.
No.
That's quite the combination of casks. Having a nose here. Anyone who does have the glass in front of them, let us know what you're nosing and you're tasting in the comment section. I'm seeing a lot of very happy people in the comment section. Josh Webster saying beautiful nose, earthy and peaty.
Yeah,
I think you very much be on the right track there.
I get a bit of baked apple there.
It's interesting because it's not just peated, it's not just earthy. There's a sweetness in the background, a kind of caramelized flavoring as well, and more so into that ever so slightly towards the kind of smoky bacon style peat rather than the iodine heavy kind of TCP level.
I think that's very true of our whiskies here. And the fact is, we don't have the medicinal TCP, perhaps from the Islay. It's the drier, softer smoke.
I'm going to say a little sláinte, and I'm going to have a little sip. So thank you very much, sláinte. What I'm loving about this whiskey myself is it develops very much on the palate. It develops in the glass. The sweetness almost has to be teased out. The sweetness on the nose has to kind of be teased out from the palate. It's a very big combination of that kind of sweet, earthen, kind of a little bit of malt driven at the back.
I find a bit of the chocolate comes towards the end along with the soft smoke. There's a bit of lingering spice, ginger there.
Absolutely. I think anybody tasting this right now is going to be studying the glass. I as a rule never peek these glasses or these whiskeys before the show. I like to be pleasantly surprised as we go through. And this is one I think a few of us would enjoy spending some time with. It's very heavily layered whiskey, but a fantastic.
It's complex and rich there. I just think it's a fantastic whiskey to be sitting in front of a fire. Imagine drinking this.
I think rich is again the right word there. It's almost, if you think of a kind of a decadent rich cake that has that kind of
Christmas cake,
little sweetness, but kind of almost there's a velvetiness, creaminess to the palate. There's a lot of flavor going on. It's very interesting. 46% ABV, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
a fantastic ABV. You said it was released when? Sorry, Graeme?
Before Christmas. Yeah, I think.
Is it a limited release, or would it be a part of the range?
Certainly ongoing. And since then, we've been shipping it around the world, and Ireland, the UK. And we just sent out 40-foot container to Australia, one to the US, and we'll be sending another one shortly out to the US again. So it's getting, and in fact, I forgot to say it, won double gold at San Francisco recently.
So it's certainly not sitting on your hands up in the distillery anyway. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of going on.
Yeah, there is. Yep, it's a great time.
Absolutely. I see Robert dropping into the comment section saying that he's not a huge lover of peat normally, but he finds this incredibly approachable with a lovely balance of the peat and the sweetness. He likey, apparently. His word, not mine.
Yeah.
But fantastic. And I suppose if this is kind of the Silkie's evolution of bringing, I suppose, some peace to the blends and the whiskey and the different expressions, is that something we should be expecting from the lovely distillery that I see lined up behind you there?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, and just going back to the previous comments there about peatiness. That's the thing we often find as people taste the Silkies. The first response is, "Well, I don't like peated whiskey," and yet when they taste it, it is that the remark on the difference between the soft, dry smoke, the peatiness compared to perhaps the medicinal notes of the Islay whiskies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some people saying that they're loving the toffee notes in there as well, with sweet peat smoke, which I presume, like you said, that difference between what people maybe expect from Islay whiskies in that kind of medicinal TCP levels. And I've seen a couple of people dropping in saying that they've added ice to this and it has changed the body of it altogether, and it seems to be interacting quite well. So as everyone has their own ways of consuming whiskey, and I think I'm glad to hear it's enjoyable all around.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely way. Just a small chunk of ice in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you're saying, it's Sliabh League. That's what we want to be known for, but kind of restoring the traditional Donegal way of making whiskey, the peatiness, and that's what we're going to be doing here at the distillery.
Absolutely. So kind of bringing that old Inishowen reputation of peated Putchine whiskies to the modern times, modern world. Is that the idea?
Yeah, for sure. Perhaps, the Donegal had a strong tradition of illicit distilling up in the hills, etc. And we believe all of this would have been using peated malt, and that's what we want to do: restore that tradition here with the distillery that we've just been commissioning, and really we're starting to ramp up into full production now.
Fantastic. And will the distillery produce any unpeated whiskies, or is it solely peated?
No, that's going to be our mission. Is all about peated whiskey.
Okay, and pot still as well as malt?
Yeah, we've made a couple of batches of pot still. Our mash bill is going to be a bit different: 50% malt, 30% unmalted barley, and 20% oats.
Fantastic, and a phenomenal level of oats to bring in that kind of sweetness to the mash bill as well. And I know you have a slightly different brewing system set up than most distilleries in Ireland. From my understanding, you're distilling on the grain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yep. That was sort of Jim's, the owner, Jim and Moira's idea was, if Jim's grandfather was to come back, he would recognise the process as he distilled up in the hills. And so we've got grain right through the process. So we don't have the traditional out a ton. We've got a hammer mill, mash cooker, and then we take the grain right the way through the wash still. And that caused a lot of problems at the beginning with that kind of process with the equipment. But it's amazing because when you're sort of see the vats fermenting there, etc., gives off such a rich, nutty aroma. And the spirit we've got, we're sort of delighted with the spirit is coming off. It's got that soft smoke, very sweet. And for new make spirit, it's surprisingly smooth.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And from that point of view, I suppose distilling on the grain be very unusual in Ireland, if not the only distillery I can think off the top of my head distilling on the grain. But having a hammer mill into a mash conversion vessel or mash cooker, I suppose a fantastic setup to be able to do that. But not only that, but also use the inclusion of the likes of oats in the mash bill as well. Ronan Corcoran dropping in saying that what you're describing is an art, Graeme, and I'm sure a very fun system to try to explore as well.
Oh, it's been a fantastic opportunity in terms of going through the commissioning, and I think sort of for everyone was sort of when that first spirit came off the still, we standing there, we didn't really have any strong preconceptions or any, we just sort of nosed it and tasted it as it came off, and as a group sort of deciding the cut point that gave us the character of the whiskey that we want.
Absolutely. And did you commission on malt?
Yeah, we started off on malt. We did several batches, and then we actually had a lot of problems because we started off with a roller mill, and that didn't work so well. So we ended up taking that out and putting the hammer mill in and doing a bit of retrofit on the distilling.
I was going to say you had an upgrade before you even got started.
Yeah, sort of a couple of months into the process, we kind of realized perhaps this isn't going to work as well as we wanted. But it was a good learning, and it's running well now. We're recruited up to full strength. Everyone's trained, and we'll be increasing to double shifts in the next couple of weeks. And we had the first production of the pot still, and it said sort of with the 20% oats. What came off again was incredibly smooth spirit coming off. The oats give it a very soft mouthfeel, again sweet on that, almost bready in a lot of ways. And so we've had the first, and what makes us unique again there is that the oats we're using is actually peated oats.
Okay, so they're malted and peated at that point rather than raw.
Yeah. So we have the peated malt and the peated oats. So we'll be later in the year we'll be laying down our first barrels of pot still whiskey.
And is there a reason that you decided to use peated oats as opposed to unmalted oats?
Yeah, we want all in for peat. Really, we want to sort of ramp up the level of peat in the spirit.
Oh, fantastic! A fantastic idea to chase, of course. And in terms of those people in the comment section that are looking towards an eye on Donegal, are you a few months away yet from a fully fledged visitor centre experience?
Right, where the target date for the visitor centre is going to be sort of mid to late June on that.
Okay.
So we'll be delighted to host people there for a tour and a visit up here.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I'm sure if we keep an eye on the social media pages, we'll be able to see as that progresses as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Got a strong media presence, and Graeme's just prompted me. Perhaps I need to get on Twitter now.
Well, listen, all we need now is another Graeme on Twitter. The other Graeme is a famous man. He's peeking into the camera now. I'm the only one who can see him, but he's having a good laugh. He's a firm man and a firm believer in a good Twitter poll and a few joking feuds with a few of the guys out there. So I'm sure Graeme Bell, if you join Twitter now, you'll be in good company. Two Graemes.
Yeah. At least the name's spelled differently, so we shouldn't get confused.
Exactly. In fairness, you could probably start a podcast of the fact that you're both you're such similar professions, but yet different names. It's probably set you up nicely for a career in social media if the distilling doesn't work out.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, I don't want to give up the day job yet.
Fantastic. Just before we go, I have had a couple of questions. In terms of, obviously this whiskey has a lot of different cask types that have led into the creation of this whiskey. Is there a maturation plan, I suppose, for the new distillery? Is there any particular wood types or spirit types that you're focusing on to build out the distillery, or is that still in the planning phases?
Oh, we've got a couple of 100 barrels in the warehouse already, so we've kind of started off with first fill bourbon casks. We've got some sherry. We're taking 2 or 3 different supplies of sherry casks in just to sort of decide which one we think is going to work best with the spirit on that. So it'll be mostly bourbon and sherry casks with this spirit.
Fantastic. Always a great casks to showcase some fantastic peated whiskey. So this has been the legendary Midnight Silkie Irish whiskey. 46%. For a lot of people, I see a first showing and a fantastic first showing as well. I see a lot of people have been enjoying it. Graeme, if people are going to find the distillery online, is there a website to be able to check it out?
Sliabh distillers.com on that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be all links to different places to pick up your bottles. But of course, if you are a subscriber of 3 Drams and have your pack for this month, pre-purchased, pre-bought as a subscriber, you will, of course, at the end of this show in a few minutes' time, have an email straight to your inbox giving you a discount code on all 3 whiskeys as an item or individually as well. So you just have to wait 10 or so more minutes, and then you can put the legendary Midnight Silkie straight into your basket and have it shipped out to your door, thanks to the guys at Irish Malts. Graeme, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for introducing us to your whiskey and giving us insight into your role at the distillery there, and giving us a little behind-the-scenes tour, I suppose, verbal tour of what to expect from the distillery.
Great.
Thanks you so much. Well, I am delighted that we are trucking along, as always, at the point of the show where we've reached our 3rd dram of the evening. And of course, this is dram number 1, as I mentioned earlier. Slight technical hiccup, but we're back on track. I am delighted to be introducing you to head distiller Ronan Russel from Blacks of Kinsale. So welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Apologies, first of all. I got my dates mixed up there, and I was out looking at a second-hand couch of all things to be doing on a Wednesday evening.
Well, you're with us yet, so not a problem at all. So thanks so much for joining us. I suppose for people that don't know Blacks, why don't you give us a quick rundown while I pour dram number 1, everyone, right here into the glass, and give us a little, I suppose, who the distillery and the brand are, and then we'll jump right into the whiskey.
Well, Black started off, and you probably know us from our beer brewing days, which is still kind of to the forefront of the business. So that was started in 2013 by Sam Black and his wife Maudlin. So I joined them probably about 4 years after that. So they started off just making beer. The beer that was used in this cast, the Black IPA, was actually their second release. So they released the KPA first, which is their pale ale. Then there was the Black IPA that came out next, and then there was the World's End Stout, which is also in the Pieces of 8 series. That was number 1 in the series for guys that are collecting them all there. So yeah, we're located down in Kinsale. So we're in the process of building our new site at the moment, which will be kind of on the water, and it'll be a lovely visitor centre, and we can start welcoming people. It's not just the industrial estate down the old farm lane that we were used to. So there's kind of big exciting things happening in the future, especially for the whiskey side. So we got 2 stills, fruity stills from Italy just at the start of COVID, and we couldn't get them over to commission them or anything, so we just set them up ourselves, and we started running spirit, and we were really happy with the kind of new making stuff that we were getting off it. So we said that we wanted to start to build the whiskey brand alongside the beer brand, which is why we started with this Pieces of 8 series. We dipped our toe in with the Black Ops, which is kind of a double charred whiskey. That was kind of our first whiskey that we brought to the market. And then with this series, it's kind of dipping our toes and just showing that what we're looking for going forwards with the distillery is to try and marry the fact that, you know, we are Ireland's only brewery and distillery co-located on the same site. As far as I know, but things change so differently now, and there might be another one that popped up in the last couple of weeks. But at the time of print, we were the only ones doing both on the same site.
Exactly. I'll back up your point. There was one before you that separated. You're the only ones now, and I'm sure one will pop up after you. But I think it's a very fair statement to make, and a phenomenal marrying of the 2 ends of the brewing system. You know, they say before spirit is whiskey, it's beer first. So having both the brewing technical expertise into the distilling is phenomenal.
Yeah, and like to that end, like we've. Like, in my opinion, we've one of the best brew houses in Ireland, and we just bought that recently as well, which is predominantly designed for making great beer. But with that, it allows us the flexibility and the ability to make all different kinds of mashes and mash profiles, and we can run a lot of different things through in different kind of percentages, and that we wouldn't have been able to do on a previous system. And I know, talking to other distillers, that a lot of them are quite jealous of the fact that, you know, we've state-of-the-art heated mash tun and separated lauter tun, and, you know, everything is the level of automation and the level of kind of complexity of what we can do is kind of second to none. So far we've done kind of predominantly through our Cask series program. We were doing a lot of kind of pot still whiskey and single malt, just to kind of fill these founders casks that we were generally kind of given a lot of money for doing, you know, which has helped us get to this stage. But then kind of down the end of last year, we started to really experiment and really push the boundaries of what both the equipment and what kind of flavor profiles we were looking for, to try and get some, you know, just put down some interesting spirits. So we don't know if they're going to be great in 5 or 6 years' time. Nobody does. That's the really tricky thing about the whiskey game. But I think it's a really, really interesting start, and I'm very, very excited to see where we're going to be going forwards.
Absolutely. Why don't you give us a little sneak peek into the whiskey we're tasting here before we delve too far into the actual distillery itself? Because I'm cognizant I never like people sitting with a full glass and not jumping into it.
Yeah, I'll echo you on that. So with these whiskies, basically we just wanted to try and see, you know, obviously when your spirit isn't of age, you have to source your whiskey from elsewhere. So this is ex-Coull stock for everybody that really wants to know. So we got an amount of Coull 8-year-old single malt, which we thought was absolutely beautiful. It was just so smooth, it was so light, and it was so welcoming that we thought the natural thing to do with it was to try and put a little twist on this spirit, you know. I think the spirit itself is beautiful, but if you can add another layer of complexity and try and just see how far you can push this one spirit with a few different finishes. So like this, the 8 on the side of the bottles there is a piece of 8 series. So there'll be 8 releases with exactly the same liquid gone into each one. And then there's different cask types and different lengths of stays in the cask that we've used to try and produce something a little bit different. So we started off we did a World's End, which is our Imperial Stout cask. And then we did a maple syrup cask, which came out very, very strong. And then the third one then is the Black IPA cask finish. So our Black IPA is obviously a great seller. You probably see it around. It's kind of a red label bottle, and it's very it's both malt forward and hop forward for a 5% beer. So we said that, you know, we'll try this in the beer and see which kind of notes it brings to it. So
yeah, I actually. Speaking of which, no, as you say, you see it around. I was actually imbibing upon it in a bar in Toulouse about 2 days ago.
Really,
make it full circle there. Yeah, I was over for a whiskey show and a bar very well stocked on black spirits. So
excellent. So we were seeing what the beer could bring to this, and this one took quite a long time. It was about 9 months before we were happy with the kind of flavor profile that kind of came through. And I think Alan Crew kind of nailed it there. You know, I get a lot of chocolate on the back end of this whiskey. You get that kind of creaminess from the chocolate in the aroma, and then you can still get the hops just coming all the way through, both on the nose, and I think there's a real citrusy kind of finish on it. The predominant hops, I don't know how kind of beer focused you guys are now, but the predominant hops in the Black IPA are Citra and Cascade, which are both kind of very citrus, floral, kind of herbal kind of hops. And I think that comes through beautifully in the whiskey.
Well, I'm going to say Sláinte. I'm going to have a little sup for here. So Sláinte.
Cheers. So you almost get the bitterness of the beer on the back of that. It's when you lick your lips afterwards. I think it's a really kind of a luscious, very full-on finish to an already great whiskey.
Absolutely. There's a lot going on there. There's that kind of maltiness that brings through some of that biscuity bitterness as well, and then that kind of follow through of the hops. It makes for a very, very interesting flavor profile. I like it's familiar yet differentiated from the nose, which makes it a very interesting imbibing experience.
Yeah, I think kind of across the palate, it changes quite a lot. It starts to pull you one way towards the kind of I know there's carafa, which is a kind of a heavily roasted barley in that beer, which kind of brings you one way, and then the citrus cleanness kind of comes through on the back end. I think it really worked out very, very nicely.
Yeah, that it's great because in my experience, IPA cask finished whiskies can be very kind of different in their power of the hops, the bitterness, the floral, the fruity. And this is as someone was saying earlier, it's that citra focus again from the hops, but it's very balanced. It has, I think, that taken a lot of that backbone from the black element of your, as you said, the malty and the citrus elements very much show through in the whiskey, and not always do beer cask finishes really showcase the beer as well as the whiskey. And I think that's very well balanced, very interesting whiskey.
Yeah, we've had a couple that didn't turn out quite so well.
And I mean, always the fun of both brewing beer and making whiskey is there's always a few experiments that go awry, and there are things you'll learn next time how not to do better.
Yeah, there's a sharp learning curve, but you have to try these things, and we can't just source whiskey and do nothing with it. And I think going forwards, all right, we're going to try a lot of different mash bills. We're really kind of breaking out on that side. Some of the mash bills that I tried there were just completely off the wall stuff. I don't know how they let me do it, but like what happens if you distill a stout and this kind of stuff. Like so, the GI is flexible to a certain extent.
Fantastic, yeah, and I suppose the brewing systems will give you that flexibility to be able to process those kind of beers.
Yeah, we have access to all these beers. It's when we're in kind of full flow, like there's a new beer every month, so why not have that influence going through into the whiskey side of things.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And how was I suppose plumbing and commissioning your own stills? That must have been an experience.
Yeah, it was a lot of P&ID diagrams. If anybody's familiar with them, it's that was a learning curve.
You said they're from Philly, did you?
Yeah, so we got two girls from Philly. We'll have a third watch still in our new site.
I was gonna say that, so they're not just PNIDs, they're PNIDs in Italian.
Yeah. And the phone support was pretty much non-existent, and obviously everybody was shut down, so it wasn't just that there was no traveling, and they weren't allowed to manufacture over there, and they couldn't get the raw ingredients, so everybody was just kind of sent home, So you'd send off an email with where does this pipe go? And like 4 days later, you kind of go, that's not our pipe. Like, we figured that out in the meantime, But yeah, like we obviously got professionals in to do this kind of steam side of it. So from the frilly side, it was a lot of the automation stuff that we could kind of get dialed in, and specialist electricians and stuff now. I'm not going to take all the credit for it, but I did tighten quite a few bolts. There's a lot of bolts on these stills.
That's the important part. As long as they saw you putting in the elbow grease, I'm sure it's all well appreciated.
Copper grease on all the bolts now, so we knew they were going to move again.
Exactly. I'm sure there's a few valves that were put rightly in place by yourself. That'll make all the difference, of course.
Oh yeah, that's it. I spent a good few months studying different kind of water flow diagrams and stuff to try and get the cooling systems right. And I think, to be honest, we did a very good job. And hopefully someday, in a few years now, you get to try the fruits of our labor and see what we're doing and what we're kind of going at. And once we have the visitor center up and running, I hope we can have maybe a tasting down there, and then we can treat you to a small bit of new make, and you can kind of get an idea of where we're looking to go with both the spirit and the finishes and the beer, and how we would like to marry everything together.
Absolutely. Well, I very much look forward to it. Do you guys have like a future timeline of when you think that the new distillery and visitor center be open? Is it a 2024, 2025 job?
We've had quite a few timelines.
Like every good distillery build.
Yeah, we've been straight up about it. We're about a year and a half late in our plans at the moment, but I'd say we should be in full production definitely before the end of the year. I'm hoping for about October. But at the moment, with the cost of building materials and stuff, it'll be a staged development. Just it's not financially viable to build the entire bar and visitor center side of the business at the moment with the cost of materials. It's just everything's just going through the roof. So hopefully next summer we'll have all of that done. But yeah.
So what you're saying is we should be drinking a lot more beer and Black's whiskey in the background while we wait.
Yeah, you can always come down and see. It's right on the water. We just won't have too many chairs, and we won't have all the nice bits and pieces. But
it's fine. We'll pop down the local off license, and we'll pick up a few bits and do our bit for the visitor center, of course.
It won't be a dry production center anyway.
There you go.
There's beer around, and there's always lots of things that need tasting. And obviously, we value people's opinion. It's it's great being able to even do these things again, and being able to talk to people. We're over in Germany there at Pro Wine exhibition, and just so last weekend before last, it's all kind of blurring into one. But yeah, just being able to meet people again and getting their opinions on the spirit, and kind of talking to them about where we are and what we're trying to do and what we're kind of going to do going forwards. It's really interesting,
Exactly. And for anyone that doesn't know, Provine, kind of probably the world's largest drinks B2B show to meet, I suppose, for brands like yourselves and everyone else in the Irish whiskey industry to meet all of your existing customers, retailers, importers, distributors, and also build upon that to build more and new introductions and supply our distributors as well. So fantastic to see so many Irish brands over there, and of course Port Bia doing a fantastic job representing Ireland with probably the biggest country specific area in all of Provine. So I'm sure many more years. Yes,
it's been valuable support. Really, they really do help.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. So if we were to look online to see more information about Blacks, where should we be looking?
Blacksbrewery.com is a good place to start. Anyway, you get a lot of information there. There's nice pictures and things there of plans and things for the new site. You get a lot of information then about the different whiskies, and I think there might be a few kind of sneak peeks into the other 5 releases as well. I'm not sure how far the marketing guys have got with those. We're just waiting on labels at the moment, labels and bottles, or we'd probably be up to number 5 now if there wasn't so many supply issues at the moment. But we're going through a bit of a rebrand, and at the moment we're looking for a different bottle style, so we're getting that made over in China, and but China's still locked down at the moment. It's mad, for us, we think that COVID is over here. There's no mask. We're out having a great time, and China's locked down again. So.
Well, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of very fun and new things coming from Blacks in the next couple of months. I'm delighted to see that people can find you online and get those sneak peeks. Let us know in the comments section what have been your favorite whiskeys for this evening. Again, everyone's taste is subjective, so I love seeing all the combinations of different numbers, and particularly if you've any thoughts on why your favorite was your favorite. I'm seeing a lot of people extending their thanks to you, Ronan, and to our 2 Graemes. And of course, as always, a very big thank you to the guys at Irish Malts for putting this on, who are the formidable force behind 3 Drams, getting tasting packs across the world. But not only that, everyone who is subscribed this month will get or has already at this point gotten a discount code straight to your inbox. So if you have absolutely loved the blacks 8-year-old, you can get that with a lovely discount shipped directly to your door where it is legal to do so. States, I'm looking at you. There's so many states that have such random laws. But anyway, if you want to get all 3 whiskeys, you can get a further discount. Just look in your inbox. There's always perks to being a 3 Drams member. For those of you who are getting those discount codes, jump on straight away. Make sure you don't miss out on any of these fantastic whiskeys. And as I said, to go straight to your door. Let us know in the comment section what have been your favorites. Ronan, thank you so much for your time. As I always say to our guests, feel free to hang out for a moment after we finish up. We all do say hello after the fact. To the 2 Graemes, a very big thank you to you guys. And of course, everyone watching at home, subscribing and joining us after the fact. Thank you so much. And as always, a very big thank you for spreading the good word of Irish whiskey around the world. So thank you again. Good night.